Hi everyone and welcome. This is just a really quick astrology update where I would like to share with you perhaps a different nuance of the energies that we have at play right now and why, this is the nature of astrology, this is the nature of mysticism as you head deep into the aspects. Even, what you knew before, even what you predicted, even what was so very familiar and even divinely gifted to you information wise, when you live it, it's so different. The lived experience will always be profoundly different. For some people, in various different, matters in life, not just in this one. This is where knowledge and wisdom and even preparation, diligence even, it makes you feel in a certain way. Of course, you're ready, but when the lived experience comes, it will always be different. For some people, a little bit worse, for other people, a little bit better, for others, still a big surprise, but this is where we can't really expect the lived experience to match any prediction or anything that we even know. Even if it's like the highest version of this, a divine prophecy, it does prepare you on in a certain way, but never emotional. It prepares your soul, okay, but not emotionally, not mentally, not physically, not hormonally, or so very many different things. This is where the lived experience is the proper thing. And this is why, predictions, and even if we use astrology super predictively or tarot or whatever, it's pointless. Spiritually, physically, even in so very many ways, it's pointless. Our minds, however, they don't see it as pointless because the mental sphere will think that it's in control because it knows. So this is already the devil in the detail. This is why a lot of really, not me, I'm not included in this, but a lot of really, really, really talented and like soul calling astrologers don't use predictive at all. They don't use synastry, they don't use all the tricks of the trade, they just keep it pure. Their own knowledge and understanding, and how should I say, personal friendship with the planets, that is their source of power and their knowledge, and they don't need prediction. So, my favorite astrologer, Nadia Shah, has a book not about this theme, but a book that can help greatly inspire anyone who wants to connect to the planet itself, to the energy of the planet, where perhaps it can be the symbolism of the planet that can communicate straight with the person in a different way. So, long story short, Prayers to the Sky by Nadia Shah, I highly recommend it. And also, by the time I'll get to the end of this recording, there will be another book from my favorite astrologer that is so, so, so helpful that I'm gonna recommend. But first of all, let's begin. So today is very special because we have this new moon conjunct Lilith squaring Jupiter. Now, about the doomy and gloomy part and how potentially it can be very dangerous, I've spoken about this in my horoscope and in my special recording as well, and so many of the astrologers spoke about this. But let's see what we can do with this energy, because squaring Jupiter square is sometimes the most hard to process aspect because it can get into the very core of your being, the faith, where your faith lies. Now, faith can be very, very sacred, even if it's misaligned. This is where our faith is sacred. No one, not even the most divine forces, will actually care if it's misaligned or whatever. If it's sacred to you and it is felt in a sacred way, then chances are everything has to respect that faith. Now, of course, there came 2020 better said, and 2021, which was a time where nothing respected the misaligned faith. Usually, as I said before, earlier, like, as long as something is sacred to you, the universe has its tendency, especially not in matter, because in matter it's the opposite, religious wars, and we don't respect each other's faith. But in the spiritual realms, that is more like respect in the sense that nothing and no one wants to question it. Your spirit guides and something very personal to you is a different story, because that's personal. They want and are fighting for your greater good. But the universe and the general spirit world will just respect that which you tell them to respect, if you know what I mean. So this is why spirituality and a spiritual understanding of everything can be so very difficult and complicated, because there is not just two polarities. There is millions of polarities, millions of nuances. The ancients, especially, let's say, more ancient Greeks, ancient Romans, ancient Egyptians, so the proper ancients, an elated feeling, an emotion that would not go away. Perhaps even a fantasy, a dream, an illusion, the Maya, so to speak, which would not, definitely not go away. They associated that with the divine power, and usually that emotion became a divine representation. Many small local deities, many heroes who weren't really divine, but they are a very, very active, organic part of the whole legends. Well, you can imagine that the emotion that they and their story and their acts or inactions or whatever provoked, that is the most divine part. Not necessarily what actually happened. The emotion, the feeling, the elation of it, good or bad. Like, let's say, Prometheus. Bad, we feel sorry for him. But it's an elation, it's divine. So, again, where I want to go with this, faith. This new moon, this is where it doesn't necessarily trigger your faith triggers it. And if your faith is Jupiterian, in Jupiter in the sign of Aries, you're like a Joan d'Arc, or any other champion of Christ, champion of the divine, a champion fighting for faith, fighting with purity, fighting against the odds. And right now, against the odds is the key theme here. Why? Mars holds as almost like an exact conjunction with his sister Eris. So that means Eris is all about against the odds, the underdog. Eris is, and I could go to her legend with the wedding in Mount Olympus and all of that, but maybe that doesn't really exemplify her very, very best highest qualities, but David and Goliath does. There's the underdog who has no chance ever to be triumphant, victorious, or even perish with dignity. And there's Eris, the force of chaos, the hazard. And she can be good intended when she really, really wants to. She obeys no one. Chaos obeys no one. She is divinely created to be chaotically free. She can choose good intent. And then David wins. So where I'm going with this energy is in our lives collectively right now. And the new moon just makes us hyper emotional, and Jupiter makes us truly, truly fuel that with our faith. Now, for some people, it's self-destructive because of so many reasons. For example, Neptune retrograde. Neptune is stationary retrograde right now, so it's at its peak of its power. Mental illness, emotional vulnerability, emotional toxicity, victimhood, drama, toxic femininity. Why am I say toxic femininity and not masculinity? Cancer, moon in Cancer, black moon Lilith in Cancer. There are some energies out there which do highlight the darkest aspect of the feminine, and this is where, and I'm a feminist, don't get me wrong, but even feminists would be shocked that sometimes the feminine can be 10 trillion times darker than the masculine. Because the masculine dark is just really hard-headed, like the battering ram Aries. Just do it. The feminine likes to put such a twist on it to really, how should I say, defy all that there is. And Black Moon Lilith loves that. Black Moon Lilith is one of the most impure feminine energies out there, the unholy feminine. So you can imagine that it's the enemy of feminine most of all, because it dislikes true and pure mothers. So Jupiter is fighting this energy. Jupiter, what is Jupiter doing? In Aries, squaring it, exact square. Sun and Moon, new beginning, sign of Cancer, mother, family of origin, local community, ethnicity, your past, everything that you got from your family. You might be inclined by Lilith to look at the bad things, what they didn't give me, the bad education, they failed me, they this and that. And Cancer, but my neighbor, my cousin, my this and that, my brother, my sister was favored by my parents. So, this is one primary example of how this will play out 1,000,000% in the life of those people who were perhaps disadvantaged by their families. Why me? Why did I not deserve, or why did I deserve? These very, very delicate and dark family subjects, the energy unconsciously of them wants to pop to the surface. Jupiter, on the other hand, says, Jupiter in the sign of Aries, new beginning, a new beginning that you never ever experienced in your life after the Great Conjunction 2022 and all of that, after a lot of eclipses and strong energies. So the world is not the world of yesterday. So it's not a typical new beginning. And ultimately, with Mars, the ruling planet of Aries, hell-bent on war, and I'll speak about this in just a second, well, this will empower you if you're very, very, how should I say, wise and open spiritually to fight against Lilith. Because what power could possibly Lilith have against Jupiter? Lilith in astrology is not a planet. She is just a mathematical calculation, a projection, something that they use in geometry, really. So she doesn't exist. She's only in the mind. And if the mind allows her to sink deeper, she'll corrupt the heart. But Jupiter, on the other hand, well, let's think about physical reality. Why? Mercury holds a trine with Saturn. What does physical reality tell us? That Jupiter is not just the biggest planet in our solar system. Mysteriously, it was one step away of becoming a brown dwarf, meaning that our solar system would have had 2 active stars. Now, this is why we see why Jupiter, even in legend, Zeus was the champion of the gods. And physical reality, if it's real even, if astronomy, cosmology, if it's real. Yeah, you heard that. If it's real, well then, it kind of shows the fact that Jupiter in every way, shape and form is a very strong energy, a very strong everything. So if anything can fight this combination is Jupiter. If you want to make it pure, you will make this new moon pure, as in elimination. Square. Let's not think about the past. Let's not care about how it is that we were a victim. Let's not care about how toxic our local community became over the years. Why? We can change it. Jupiter, first of all, with our feeling and with faith. So let's make sure that we use our spiritual warrior energies to fight for, how should I say, the purity of the world, the purity of all that humankind is, because that's also Cancer. The Cancer is the bottom of the sky. So what humankind collectively sees as its roots, physically as an ethnicity, the land was of my ancestors. But in an elevated sense, what does feed the humankind? Love, compassion, diligence, responsibility, playfulness, creativity, arts, the good side of fantasy and the illusion and the Maya. If that is what we want, Jupiter, we have to want this to feed us. It will be paradise on earth. But right now we don't feed from that. We feed from greed. We feed from why am I not good enough. We feed from why did my neighbor get the job, the grant, the money, the loan and not me. We feed from, well, I can't even get out of the house because other people are possessed by lust or by not sure what, but they are not normal, so I better stay in. So you see, either we are in survival mode or we are in toxic mode. And this is why this new moon also reminds us of, well, what do we nurture ourselves with? What does our mind eat? What does our soul eat? What does our emotional world eat? If it eats lust, pornography, and it doesn't need to be lust, you'd go out, let's say to a festival, and you see, like, I don't want to be judgmental here, but some people's optional clothing style, well, that has lust written over it. If you look away, then you're a bad person. If you dare to say anything that's indecent, oh my god. So what can you do? Not go there. Just not go there. And the problem is that person will think it's self-expression, and it is. But there is a limit between artistic and semi-transparent, playful, alluring, the true Maya. And there is something which is downright out of something grotesque, something that wow, no. So this is where the energy of this black moon Lilith, it's everywhere. We feed from her, like it or not. Or, like, let me give you another example. And this is even ludicrous, but so there is a custom where we go and eat a McDonald's or fast food, and we very quickly drink fizzy pop drink with a lot of ice in it. Now that destroys our stomach and digestive system almost immediately, because what does fat do when it meets ice? It becomes that lardy thing or whatever. You can imagine that the stomach will never ever ever like it, and you just poison yourself. And this is like the experiment with the frog in warm and then boiling water. We won't feel it as discomfort anymore. We'll just crave it because that's our nourishment. So we feed with death. But this is just physically, and we're doing it. You can use that spiritually, ethereally. What do we feed ourselves with? Lustful songs, horror movies, doomsday, superhero stories, but which are already so ridiculous that everyone's a villain, really. Or the new type of fantasy stories and fantasy games where at the end of the day, after like 10 hours of mission or what else, the depiction of creator or the divine or supernatural, the very source, within that fantasy world of the game, of course, is the villain. So you can imagine that all of these are psychological manipulation and subtle programming. What do they do with us to our faith? Well, of course, there has to come a time when Jupiter says, I'm fighting back. And this is where Jupiter's fighting back begins. We have the option here to embrace Lilith, Black Moon Lilith, or to cast her out. And this is also a side note for those who worship Black Moon Lilith. Well, what you worship is not what you think. What you worship is a nuance of Ishtar, Inanna, Ostara, or Eostre, or whatever, goddess of fertility, or the depiction of Venus. But do you remember the legend when she descended to hell and some thing arose from her place, her dark sister? Well, if you knew the energy that you're worshipping, you what would you do is give up on the name. The name is the bad part. The name is like an information. It doesn't matter if you know the real, if you name it that way. Well, but anyway, this is not, I'm not judging here, I'm just giving advice. So for those of you who worship Lilith, you don't know who you're worshipping because everything about her is hidden and she wants to appear as benevolent. And if she's helping you, that's not Lilith who's helping you, it's, as I said, that which she steals every female deity's identity. So, and the female deities who you worship really and call her, they're smarter, like they're deities, they're divine beings, so they will ignore the name and just, help you. But sometimes when you give way too much power to the name, then is when when things twist and turn. That is when instead of the love that you asked for, you get something so lustful that it's not fun anymore after the third, fourth, fifth time. So this is how she really operates. So the name, where I'm going, we must understand. The name is not what you think. It's just a name. So this is why Jupiter right now has to make justice, if you know what I mean. And the way this can empower us, fight and will our desires in the most pure way possible. Love, compassion, Cancer, a non-familiar version of Cancer. Fraternity, sorority, but in not a Gemini way, not in the mind, but the heart, That's beautiful. And Jupiter asks us to make it beautiful. The other energy is Neptune. And I spoke about Neptune and the powerful disillusioning and wake-up call that we get when retrograde. This is also a choice, because this just presents us a different side of the conjunction of Neptune and Jupiter that we experienced on the 12th of April, the whole month of April, May, better said. And of course it's gonna be a little bit wake-up call, but it's our choice if you let that turn into a bad illusion or a bitter, sour, dark disillusioning, or a moment of true wisdom and determination to keep on your path. And last but not least, the scary part. well, we can see a lot of disruption, fires, explosions, violence, and even destruction and human lives, the cost of human lives, playing out on the world stage. And this is not really a big coincidence because Eris and Mars together are squaring Pluto, and that Capricorn, the structures, the norm, the old norm which hasn't died, which stubbornly refuses to give way, to die, etc., etc. And instead of accepting its destruction and its change, it keeps on building. The buildings get stronger, bigger, skyscraper projects are appearing, new industrial estates, etc., etc. That's kind of against the energy. So they know exactly what they're astrologers, what you think. So yeah, the old paradigm kind of builds itself to defend against the demise, against the destruction, against the imminent Pluto. But Mars, along with Eris, says, "Okay, I'll just demolish you in other ways." So this is an ongoing theme out there in the world. It can be so scary if you get the bad part of it. And what do I say? If you live exactly in that city where it hits, if you live in that country where it's triggered, if you live in that family or that village, or sometimes Eris, chaos, we get sucked up into this. And what I say with this is, we see the violence, we are at the protest. Or a personal example, I have a good friend of mine, we are players in an online game, so that's how we became friends. And he was visiting a foreign country, Norway, if I'm not imagined, and he just sends me the message there and then, I almost died. As in, not that he was, how should I say, targeted, but he was at a dangerous place where there was shooting, where the bullet can just hit anyone, ricocheting, and what, of course he almost died. So this is something that we will see play out. Violence, people, bad, sick people, of course, losing their sanity, snapping. This is a very, very dangerous aspect. Like yesterday, for example, again, a thing that I lived, the crossing. So in my old city, you have to press the button and then wait a little bit, it will turn green and everyone crosses the street. And we did that, about 10 people, and we were crossing the street normally. And not that a crazy driver almost killed all of us. It was like this much until it hit all of us. He was cursing and swearing at us. And, people, all of us, like people, random people on the street just stopped, and we had like 5 seconds where we kind of consulted each other if we were gonna beat him up along with his car and call the police there and then, or just go about our business. And we chose the second. But that driver may get you know what I mean? It was his luck, because 10 people will destroy your car, will destroy. And when the police come, you can imagine that the victims are gonna go home and the driver is gonna get in trouble. But they don't think. This is Mars and Eris squaring Pluto. You snap. Like, you become your darkest version permanently for, I don't know, 2 weeks, let's say. And only people who are in this mindset every day anyway are really targeted. Why? It's the truth. Pluto, the truth. This is who you are. This is what you think. You swear at people constantly. Like us spiritualists, the mantras that run in the background, the blessings and prayers or whatever. For others, still, the violence runs in the background. So, of course, Pluto will reveal to everyone who they are. So, you can imagine that this kind of Eris, Mars, and Pluto, the most aggressive and war planets in the zodiac, except Saturn, but Saturn is different. Saturn has a different methodology. Oh, Saturn. Well, Saturn and Mars are in sextile. So Mars is like aided. Eris is aided by Saturn. Saturn has all the experience. Why is Saturn, according to my personal understanding, the the most powerful planet in the zodiac? Ignoring all the rules of astrology, only Saturn has lived physical experience. Nothing can enter the earthly realm without Saturn's permission. That means Saturn, one way or another, not directly, but the sphere of Saturn knows the experience, the feeling of it. That's how it permits or doesn't permit. So Saturn blessing Mars and Eris and going against Pluto will activate 2020 12th or of January, the Saturn Pluto conjunction. Again, it will activate it again. So it will not be a beautiful energy or an easy energy out there in the world, but for us personally, we can use that to fight for purity, fight for love, fight for that which is impossible in our lives, and may the impossible be something positive, like good. I wanna do good in the world. I want world peace. I want this and that. That which is way too beautiful to be existing in our reality. But let's wish it at least. Then you get out of the violent vibe and you alchemize it, Pluto. So thank you everyone for listening, and I do hope this was helpful, and stay safe and calm and your most loving self, please. Please do this. And you will see how you will get the better end of this energy, the better end where you will be triumphant in something. Just choose love. Thank you everyone. Until next time, bye for now.